Nice. Yeah, they informed me that the costume masquerade was going on right now. So that makes it a little more challenging, I suppose. But as long as we get a few hardcore people here. But yeah, they saw that I had enough units and they were hard up, and so there you have it. It was like I was thrown into the mix. But I have some really neat Batman and Joker word problems I throw in there from time to time. You know, so I have a good time for myself. You know, I can keep myself entertained. You know, you like extra credit? Okay, here, try this. You know, so I have some fun from time to time. You got to. You know. Anyhow, one of the things I did, oh gosh, and the book came out last summer with my Anthropology of Star Trek textbook. What it is a basic cultural anthropology course with a Star Trek template to it. And it really was designed around the course I've been teaching since '06, Anthropology of Star Trek. Since then, gosh, I developed all kinds of them, Anthropology of Aliens and Lord of the Rings and Indiana Jones and, you know, Anthropology of Science Fiction. So I've got an array of special classes that I teach as well. And I got into doing work on the book, and I decided to do a separate study on Star Trek fandom culture, which took on a life of its own. And including some work I ended up doing once the survey results were posted by everybody's website, and you know, or bits and pieces were posted on these websites. CBS had contacted me and asked me to do another study for them to help them reboot StarTrek.com. So after all that, developed some new material. One of the things I really have been dying to talk about, though, is Batman. And with the fandom, and studying the culture of fandom, and buyers at my table, and then if you pick up my book, my Twitter, you know, you'll find the link and you just click on it. And so my cards are out on the table. What I did with Star Trek, I mean, even people that said, oh, I don't really like the show much. I mean, I watch it occasionally. Yeah, but I'm trying to get, you know, the biggest picture I can of who really is part of this fandom. So that's, I mean, anybody and everybody. If somebody's just watched even one of the movies or just likes it in passing, you know, they're people that are involved with the fandom in some way or another. So, you know, qualitative and quantitative questioning on there. And then that'll be published this fall. You know, a real desire to work on. Now I've got a new desire, though. It's the Hulk. I thought Planet of the Apes would be my next weekend. I'm thinking maybe I should take on the Hulk and put Planet of the Apes on the back, but I don't know. Anyhow, that's what we've come to see, and I'm happy we have people coming to see, is Gotham's Batman and Superman and a little Gotham City and Metropolis to boot. What I find very tied in the characters are to their respective cities. Oh, Batman and Superman. Batman? Okay, dressed the way you are, both works for me. Well, I mean, I've got Star Trek and Star Wars tattoos, so I'm an anomaly in some respects as well. But I think it's really cool to look at the imagery of both cities and then look at the characters and how they've developed along with, it's like this co-evolution of character and city. The cities are perfect for each character. So basically in this I like to cover several things, taking a look at urban social issues. You know, the talk has been themed particularly to focus on the cultural imagery as well as getting into, you know, character issues with Batman and Superman in their respective cities. But looking at urban social issues, looking at Fritz Lang's Metropolis, I don't know if any of you have seen the 1927 silent. That blew me away. Fantastic film. And then the subsequent, years later, the Superman cover that mirrored that. You've seen it, okay. And so social commentary and symbolism that you see in that. If you guys are unfamiliar with it, definitely check it out. Superman's Metropolis, Gotham City and contemporary culture. I love how Gotham City really does a great job of mirroring the corruption that exists in the urban environment. You know, of course, the strange and wonderful characters aside, because we have, if you walk some city streets, you know, we could put some interesting labels on some of these characters of really mirroring the corrupt city environment and looking at urban issues and versus Superman in terms of their respective characters, Gotham City and Metropolis contemporary myth, which is a very big, I mean, I don't know how young anybody was when they started reading comics. Did you get introduced through one of the TV shows or maybe the movies, however you came into liking these characters? Or a lot of people that I've surveyed when I did the Star Trek on to the Batman one now, and only in a couple of weeks online it's got over 2,100 responses. So I'm getting some phenomenal information, some really outpouring of, you know, emotion and touching stories that people are putting out there in response to some of these questions. And, you know, really I think a lot of people turn to comic books, and, you know, whether they realize it or not initially, you know, they're looking for something. The same way you might turn to religion. People are turning to comic books, science fiction. They have all these alternative outlets, and it's adding something to their life. You know, and when Adam West died, do you know how many people posted on just on Twitter alone talking about how he taught them morals as children? Oh my gosh, you got this from Batman. That goofy 60s, you know, the campy show with the Bat-Tusi and the whole 9 yards, and these people were really quite serious about it. And I've seen a similar response in the surveys. So people are looking at these characters, these franchises, as legitimate additions to their life, enhancements to their life, helping make them who they are. So I found that interesting as well. So they do serve a mythical type role. Those narratives are very important to people, especially in the cosplay area. I'm going to pick on the only cosplayer we have in the room at the moment. Joker, what makes you pick Joker to cosplay as? Okay. Okay. No, that's okay. That's a good. Don't need that much information. If you feel she identifies with Joker, that's good enough. But I like to ask, and if you ever take the survey, if you do go online and do that, there's questions that, you know, lead you, multiple choice and then short answer, that lead people through a series of questions on cosplaying or identifying with particular characters. And what I found to be very important about people attending conventions is that they want to be part of that myth. They want to be part of the narrative. They maybe identify with some aspect of a particular character, and they may go to the quote-unquote extreme of dressing like that character, and that's perfectly fine. That means they have a strong connection to that character in some way, and it means something to their lives. It means something to their lives to come out to be at these conventions and be a part of these conventions, even perhaps meeting, you know, a celebrity from a favorite franchise or an artist from that franchise or so on and so forth. It's a way for them to participate in the whole narrative. So these things do serve a real social purpose. Looking at our urban social issues, of course, we've got class divisions. I think that's very prominent in the Batman franchise in particular. I also find it interesting, though, to note where Superman, Clark Kent, you know, this baby from Krypton, you know, raised in a Kansas, cornfield environment, basically, you know, the Midwest, as Midwest as you can get, with those types of, you know, American family values from a family that, you know, basically is a family of farmers for the most part. So I find it interesting to see how he's come from that to becoming Clark Kent. I loved watching Smallville, and I really, you know, a lot of people knocked Man of Steel, but I think it gives you such insight into this character and the struggle that he endured to become who he was. So I did like Man of Steel. I thought it had a lot of value. But yes, I think it's interesting to even look at the class structure in Superman and even Clark himself and how he's moved through that rank to become who he is, even as Clark Kent in his everyday life from where he comes from. Very prominent in Gotham, but also something you see, of course, in our everyday city life, you know, in the culture in general. And more analyses come out stating that we're becoming more of a two-class society ourselves across the country as a nation. And I think it's very easy. The middle class is basically disappearing. A lot of those structures exist more prominently in the urban environment, of course. isolation or marginalization of people, of groups, deprivation of goods and services, but very much a mirror of our in at this current moment. But it's something to Superman or any other franchise, how tied into the culture they are, because they draw on our society, and in some way they try to mirror our society about ourselves. And if you're paying attention to it, it's like, wow, there's real stories to be had there and real messages of, that. What are you going to do to change that? The world is like, and what you might want to change about it. A lot of what goes on in the urban environment also fuels a lot of the hostility, but you've got a lot of marginalization. Minority, well, I don't even want to call groups of various ethnicities, religious backgrounds, LGBT population, in general as a group, marginalized in some ways, and how that fuels this hostility towards authority figures, because they feel that authority figures are not paying attention to their needs, not making any crime. What kind of social actions result from that? Or what Batman and Superman, you've got characters that swoop in. It's like, oh, I see an injustice, I'm going to give that right away. That's what these guys do. There's a Superman. And the story came out, Superman, and goes out in the street and does community service and helps in doing this. I mean, this speaks volumes to what he's trying to do and how important Superman's figure is. Make some kind of positive impact. Bring whatever's special about you out into the world. And I think that's another thing that these superheroes encourage everybody to do in some way or another. And that's not a bad thing if you've got people dressing up like them, going out there and doing it. We've got a group in Sacramento now that I know. They go out and they do community service for kids, schools and everything. And they're trying to bring positive messages to kids by dressing as these superheroes. Which is ironic considering there's a school district, I think it was Virginia, one of the Virginias or the Carolinas, and they banned not only it started with a Wonder Woman lunchbox, but they banned all superhero material. I got a copy of the letter that's been going around the internet to put in my Wonder Woman talk, since it focused on this little girl who brought a Wonder Woman lunchbox to school. And the school wrote back a letter to the parents and said, we can't allow Wonder Woman lunchboxes or any superhero, anything, to come to our school because superheroes solve problems with violence. And I'm like, okay, now my eyes are rolling out of the back of my head. It's like, there's something very wrong with these people that are running the school district. Perhaps they were all deprived as children and, your friends all had Superman. It's like, my gosh, and if you ever... why were these superheroes created? And the only time that they resort to any violence is in response to violence, taking up nations before this and miss out on this. But it also scares me to think we're becoming cautious about who we offend and how we might offend. I mean, this is where we're headed. It's like, this is getting to be shells, really. And superhero lunchbox. Every kid through every generation has grown. My goodness, really? So it says quite a bit about us and where we might be headed, which doesn't really please me. Because if I had a kid, the first thing I'd be doing is buying that kid a superhero lunchbox and a superhero bag, Because I still have superhero backpacks and lunchboxes. You do at home. You do, right? Yeah. You got a bat mug with the wings on it for handles, don't you? Because I got one of those. Pajama pants. But I mean, gosh, yeah, I think we all have that stuff still. And we grow up with it. And when you have little kids, you buy them all this stuff because of all the marketing. So it's like, what is this superheroes bad? It's not adding up. Anyhow, so I'm looking at, the role of science fiction, the role of superheroes as cultural mirrors and really cultural teachers through their narratives that they tell in their stories, whether it's through the comics, the graphic novels, or through TV shows and the films. Whatever people's gateway is and whatever they latch onto across the boards. And there still is a real need. Oh gosh, I put my Superman picture right over it, huh? Anyhow, I mean, the government tools, they contribute really to the evolution of fight for the things that they feel are right in this. Attribute who they've become because of the UN had decided, worked with DC to put on a campaign around the globe. And 45,000 petitions just done this. At this, so feminist groups and feminism is because you look past the costume, you look past just married to a very, very strong, intelligent woman, create a female superhero. And here's one of these. When this was unheard of. She doesn't represent all women, First of all, she's white. Well, Gal Gadot's not white, technically speaking. And by the way, it's a comic book character. And, well, she's wearing skimpy clothes, and she doesn't represent us. And it's like, oh, my goodness. Oh, no, this went on. Anyhow, there's another fight to try to reverse that. That's what's going on in the world of superheroes on the female side. Anyhow, looking at Fritz Lang's Metropolis, you've got some great social commentary and symbolism at a time when you couldn't do it. 1927, and you've got, really, this is a real good area on the German political situation. That's what this film was about. It was headed, coming up, 1927, going forward and moving, World War II. It was created during the Weimar Republic, so Germany's first attempt to create a democracy after the First World War had ended. Hyperinflation, public revolts, all kinds of, public dissatisfaction with the government. And he produces this phenomenal film that really showcased, and you see it, the division. I mean, everybody was, high status and, wealthier. Everything was so enlarged. Workers were basically all clones of one another, just the things moving. So it's phenomenal that he got this out there. But boy, there's a lot of his political conflict, and there's a lot of articles you can read about him in this film. He used a science fiction wrapping. And how the government is really mind-blowing. But he got the science fiction nature of the film. It's promoted as a science fiction film, not a social. Okay. Well, I mean, the Bush administration put up that big stink. This is about us. We have to ban these movies. What is it you see in these movies that makes you think, where's your concern? I mean, I got a list, and so does everybody else around me. So, you're seeing yourself in them, that's your deal. Hello. And so he faced this long before that situation ever. Interviews with him, he credits it to the power of science fiction. And it worked. And, I hate to say it, it sounds so simplistic, but it works. I mean, I've done this with classes time and time again. I've walked the class. I know the students when and you've been through it enough semesters where you know the hot buttons and how people happen before. Politics, religion, that you don't want to hit, and you have to be kind of cautious, I suppose. Well, I went in there one day, before I talked about the relationship between the Arabic and Hebrew languages. I don't need this. No. I put together a PowerPoint set on the relationship. So I throw this out there, and people are like, what in the hell are you doing? Well, we're talking about the evolution of languages and the origins of languages and how split off and developed their own linguistics for that culture. But here's the picture. Balkans and Romans, where's your problem? People are just so thrown off, and they're just laughing too hard, trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing. And then by the time I get through it all, next slide is what I really wanted to talk about. Well, I mean, the gender one, though, that day I thought take me out, put myself in drag. I looked like Corporal Cleaner from MASH that day. I gave my regular lecture to start, went on the homework. This one woman threw a book down and started screaming, demanding to know what it was. You got a problem with me wearing a dress? Let's talk about that. So I broke into what I really wanted to talk about. Gender labels. So if I ever do, at a very bad time in this government, too. I was like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Got to cover it up somehow, but that's what I'm talking about. Really? Okay, so modernization, you can't have that. And you've always got, you see it in Batman, you see it in Superman, these classes of people that are marginalized. The people people in power need to maintain this. And so that when they see somebody poking at them, well, we can't have intelligent people. We got to ban some books. Let's see, what else can we censor and do? The education system will do that too. Good, you're in time to deconstruct the education system. Anyhow, I hear that the masquerade is going on. Excited I was to learn that. Hey, this is odd, nobody's here.
I'm here.
I know you're here, and I like that. And I appreciate their being here. Anyhow, we're looking at how it's the ones that are threatened. And why is the government threatened? Because they're the guys in power. And they go through great lengths to legitimize their power in every possible way through imagery and the culture. And by what they control, and what they features, or how they relate to other organizations and what they ask them to do for them, because it serves them. So here's a guy that puts together this film that we have here. Are they any different today? I still got these issues today here in the United States. We might have more than we used to now. Once, I'm not sure. Every time, that's why I can't turn on the news anymore. I look, but the other thing is too, when I watch the news, I turn on the news and I see race riots. I mean, what am I watching? I know I've now entered. I mean, it makes you wonder what's going on. Everything's so cyclic, and we see the same patterns repeating themselves. So what is wrong? Why can't we break these patterns? And you see something from 1927 talking about issues we're still facing. You see the issues come up in Batman. You see the issues come up in Superman. These guys are fighting these same issues. They've been marginalized. You know, they're fighting their injustices for them. So a lot of things that come up, technology and humanity as a theme, our relationship and our ongoing concern with that relationship, and where that mechanism, you know, elite versus the workers. Of course, we see the exaggerated size, like we were talking about earlier from Langston, and the role of the individual, and how that individual can in turn go out and empower other people and other groups of people. And then you have your social uprising. My gosh, and have you seen the Asian Superman? Sometime for the last 3 or 4 years now, this guy dresses as Superman, goes out in the street. Avenger Group in Sacramento, right? That does community service. Their cosplay Avenger Group. Well, she came late to lecture. We get some fantastic stuff going on because of the influence of these types of. Gosh, so there's the cover that was done to mirror the Fritz Lang. I think you're the only one that's seen that film. You guys haven't seen the film? 1927, Fritz Lang, Metropolis? You have? Ah, I know what we're talking about. So there's the Superman that was done as well. So in 1966, you know, DC Comics partnered with a pattern this after that film there. And basically, you know, looking at Superman as being that figure that steps in such an oppressive environment, out there to do such social justice, you know, actions for people and, you know, fight for the marginalized people. And Metropolis is indeed, you know, classically divided class. And in this particular comic, this is Kent. We know this, but this, has anybody read this comic? The guy in the Metropolis film, the big dude that's running the whole city. Son, Clark Kent here, Superman. This whole thing is Fritz Lang's movie using Clark and John Kent because it is just so well done. You know, Clark meets Lois. Lois is a teacher, playing teacher. This particular city. This whole Superman. This is like no other Superman ever written. This would be a great film. But it mirrors the Fritz Lang movie. And there's an undercity. And Clark comes up and he learns what's going on. He learns his father's responsible for this. Take on his father to fix these injustices and help these marginalized people. He's the savior of Superman. He's up and saves, you know, the undercity. And Lois mirrors the whole Fritz Lang movie to the letter. I'm sure on Amazon you can find this. I mean, this might be a hard one to find if you don't have it. I had to find it on Amazon and it wasn't bad. Who goes up against this father to save the city? You know, And the metallic involved in all of this, body powers by a kryptonite, that should say heart, not heart. Okay. And then John Kent allows himself to be killed so that Clark and Lois become, reunited and become the new rulers of Metropolis. And the city is all good forever. Stuff revolving around the technology, the themes of the individual, and how empowering one person. I talked about this in my science fiction lecture, and I talked about it with everything I do, I think. But one of the things, we know we need biological variability to maintain a species of any kind. You start inbreeding and what happens really work. But biological variability in a big, right? Everybody's a little bit different than everybody else. That variability is enough. Same thing with ideologies, with memes. Compasses individual senses of ethics, and ethics can make all the difference in the world. That little bit of difference in one person, something on a large scale, on a national scale, or you're doing something just very small in your own hometown or your community. You're making that big change that may some of these things to make those changes happen and make those positive changes you want to see happen. So even this can be huge. And the role of that individual is huge. Most people don't think they have any, my vote. Well, it's something. If everybody thought that way about everything, though, there's a petition drive. Well, my signature's not going to mean anything on that. We don't know that. You could be the signature that put it over the top. Or you could have signed it and told other people, hey, I just got a hold of this petition and I just signed it and you should do it. It takes is one person to think a little bit differently, even be the one that started that in some way. Anything. The role of that individual differences in how we think and how we act can make a huge difference that probably are very necessary. Present that. When you watch them, do what Batman and Superman do, right? Legally do. He said, yeah, I know what I say legally. But he's going out there and even just helping people cross streets. That group in Sacramento, they're the Avengers. And they go out there and they do some pretty things in schools, hospitals, and so forth. They're making some kind of impact. So that's what this is really all about. And again, ties this back to being legitimate, a legitimate narrative or a legitimate form of myth. And that's why these comic conventions are so successful with these characters. People want to reach out and be part of that narrative. And, I hate to say it, but a lot of fan groups, even a lot of conventions do fundraising, right? Participate. It's a pretty amazing thing. Really like our overall mainstream society, or these conventions wouldn't be this successful. People want to get away from that and enter these other worlds because they want to be part of those other worlds, but it also inspires them to go out and be different. Some social commentary, clean, vibrant city that we have here in Metropolis, right? It was introduced, the city of Metropolis was really modeled after Toronto in 1939, even though it tends to be more like Manhattan in New York. But it was actually originally modeled after Toronto, which I found interesting when I looked that up. And that came out in Action Comic number 16 there for Superman. It's a big cultural, financial hub. A lot of the themes that were mirrored, the Great Depression era, we've seen that play out, ethnic riots, and the Cold War. Superman's addressed all of those at some point or another. 20th century, we got Superman, turning the city around after it's been run by LexCorp. Well, what's LexCorp? The big evil corporate giant. And that last Lex Luthor, I didn't like. So now I've got that image that pops in my head now. I think of it. So, yeah, I know. That's the thing. It wasn't very good. But yeah, you get the 20th century comics that come around. Superman's turning the whole city around, fighting one person, fighting this big giant menace, and I think that's a real good illustration of how people need to start thinking differently and acting as individuals to fight back against their own society. If Superman can take on a whole corporation like Lex Luthor and LexCorp, I'd be in the same boat as the rest of you, so Don't feel bad. 21st century, Brainiac 13 and the B-13 technology drives this whole city into the forefront, really, and it's continued to evolve from there. Then you've got the Legion era in the 60s to the 80s with all those social themes that we've gone through being reflected. The borough urban societies. And of course, Smallville, you've got a lot going on. People of mixed ethnic backgrounds are trying to find their identities. And you've got Clark here, wrestling with who he is. He did a great job with this, with developing Clark and his origins and his need to figure out who he was and where he belonged. Definitely a parallel to the hero's journey, and focusing on really the empowerment of the individual and the impact they have on culture as they go through these journeys. And we certainly see that in Clark and the Superman character. I mean, please feel free to jump in and say, well, you have no idea what you're talking about. That doesn't show up at all. Now, Gotham City. And I like to put this, we still have plenty of time. We have 15 minutes. My favorite question, right here. See if anybody has an answer they'd like to pose to. There is an answer. I mean, there's a standard script answer to this because this is a riddle by the Riddler. So there is obviously, if you Googled it, a standard scripted answer to it. I don't like the scripted answer per se. This is a question I include in my survey as well for people to respond to in their own way. And I think this is just wonderful. I mean, Gotham City focuses on the corruption within the city infrastructure. Oh, please, every ounce of Gotham City is as corrupt as our own world, right? It's all glaring at us right here. The public figure corruption, the civic, everybody's being paid off and threatened. Everybody's mixed in with everybody. You got it all. Property crime, civic authority, corruption, police department, public safety. Who's not involved in some form of corruption in Gotham City? This is why I find it interesting that it's like, I wouldn't live in this city. You rich folks over here, oh my goodness. You got your crooked cops, your super they work for the mob, they're doing their own thing. What don't you have? This is just a perfect mirror of the real. Have you visited Detroit or Oakland lately? New York has its issues. Boston has its bad areas. And how many people how many public figures come up under fire for what they've been doing? Police officers. It happens. It's a little more showcased here through Gotham City, but they need that or you wouldn't have any stories. So they make it larger than life. But they're making their point, too. Control over all the gangs in Gotham City. Everybody knows who Black Mask is. Yes, no, we've never read any of the Gotham City comics. I see that in the back row. It's okay. We'll let you stay anyhow. Anyhow, he works with society to kill Batman. But he's eventually killed by Catwoman. And it's this whole gang war thing that breaks out in Gotham City. It's literally played out like gang wars are played out. And I thought they did a great job with this. A lot of gang and mafia type family depictions throughout the Batman franchise. So I asked the question, is the city a man? And we all know the Batman story, I hope. You've seen Batman Begins. Batman goes out there, and when he comes back, you've seen the Gotham TV series that I think also does it very well. And Gotham's attached to him. They're one and the same, and he takes on this role, kind of responsibility.